Also tonight, the 2-year anniversary of a farming accident that amputated a West Virginia man's limb.
27-year-old Bradley Beckwith was flown in critical condition to University of Virginia Medical Center. That's where his life ended and the unthinkable began for his family. After a year-long investigation, our Laura French begins our team coverage you'll see only on NBC 29.
And planning a funeral was not the only thing that they had to do. They had to think about what they were going to do with their family members' body parts. Just imagine, Beckwith's family left UVA November 26, 2011 without him and with what they thought was a bag of his belongings. It wasn't until they traveled hours home sitting on that very bag that they discovered what was supposed to be a wallet and clothing was actually Bradley's arm and fingers.
He said, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. He said that twice. I'll never forget that.
Through tears, Ralph Beckwith recounts the final moments he spent holding his grandson, Bradley.
About right here. About right here. He was laying there with his arm laying out here.
It got wrapped up around this.
The 27-year-old lifelong farmer who his family says never met a stranger got wrapped by his sweatshirt string around this power takeoff.
He was just under here. It just tore the arm off.
The new father of 2 was flown that November 2011 day to the University of Virginia Medical Center with an amputated right arm and fingers from his other hand. His wife and her family followed behind by car, while the rest of the family prayed and patiently waited for news back home in West Virginia.
Officer sitting there, he said they need to talk to me. And then it was just like I walked into hell.
Danny and Ronnie got out and said he died. I couldn't believe it. That shocked me to pieces.
Back at UVA, Bradley's wife, Chandra, and in-laws Rocky and Betty Sharp were greeted by a chaplain and given the opportunity to say one final goodbye.
They got ready to leave, and the nurse said, "You can take Bradley's belongings with you." And so he just picked the bag up that they handed him and left.
Bradley's father-in-law carried the bag out of the hospital. As he headed to his car, he realized it was unusually heavy. He just figured it was his son-in-law's steel-toe boots, so he placed it in the car, and a family member actually had to sit on the bag to make room for all the passengers.
When he got to the house, he took the bag out and put it in the building, and Chandra told him, said that you might want to go get Bradley's wallet because the bag felt wet. And when he went out to get the wallet, he reached in and got a hold of Bradley's arm. That's about where he lost it.
A distraught Rocky Sharp left Chandra's home with a bag of Bradley's severed remains and without informing his grieving daughter that the University of Virginia Medical Center gave them the wrong bag. State Health Department documents show Mr. Sharp informed his wife that they had a serious problem. 12:40 a.m. November 27, 2011, Sharp first notifies UVA about its error. The report shows he was told, quote, "Well, you signed for it." He explains that was incorrect. The operator went on to say, quote, "It wasn't his department." 7:30 a.m., more than 6.5 hours and several phone calls later, Mr. Sharp is contacted by the first senior hospital administrator after demanding answers on what to do with his son-in-law's body parts. He's told, quote, "I guess you need to take it to the funeral home." It was here at Randolph Funeral Home where Bradley's father-in-law was able to finally relinquish the bag with his remains. He was met here at the front door by a very uncomfortable funeral director, but he insisted on going inside, and this is where his worst fear was confirmed. It would be 2 months before Chandra and the rest of the family would find out about the mix-up.
It's pretty devastating, you know, but it was already bad enough I'd lost him, and I still think the hospital was a very, very good hospital. I think that they need to rethink their higher up in the hospital.
They said, how we're going to make them pay for it. And I said, Bradley would not approve of that at all. He said, I said, he would not want you to sue him.
The Beckwiths say their daughter-in-law and her parents settled with the hospital after months of trying to seek justice for a beloved father, husband, and son-in-law, who is now buried under his favorite tree on the farm where his life started and ended.
He was quite a man. When he died, he was doing what he loved. And that's good.
And I did reach out to Mrs. Beckwith and her parents through their lawyer. They declined to be a part of this story. Bradley's father did confirm that they are unable to talk because of the settlement, which is standard. Also, the Beckwiths do not hold it against them for suing. They say that their family, Chandra's parents, loved Bradley like one of their own. They suffered something completely unthinkable, as you can imagine, and they just say that they do feel that they were given the runaround by the University of Virginia Medical Center.
And it's one thing to have a tragedy just turn into a complete shock when it's something else like that that you just don't expect.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what they said, that it was absolutely shocking, but they do want to point out that in Bradley's grandfather's words, UVA Medical Center is one of the best hospitals. They have no regrets. Interestingly enough, his son, Bradley's grandfather's son, had the same sort of accident happen to him. His arm was severed in a sawmill accident, and they said that UVA actually saved his life. So when I asked them if they had any regrets, they said absolutely not. They would not have done anything else different. They feel like he was in the best hands that he could have been. But in their words, they say this was not done maliciously. It was simply a terrible accident.
That brings us to what the hospital is saying.
Right. We did obviously reach out to the hospital and ask for an on-camera interview. They did decline our interview, but they did put out the following statement. I'd like to put that up. Quote, "We have received a media inquiry about a patient event that took place in 2011. The medical center takes responsibility for the mistake made and has apologized to the patient's family for what happened. To ensure an event like this does not happen again, the medical center submitted an action plan that has been reviewed, validated, and fully accepted by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Due to confidentiality requirements applicable to patient health information, we cannot comment any further." You want to check out the report because they do definitely admit that they had done something really bad.
Yeah, some of those initial reactions, emotional on both sides, the hospital and the family, still kind of shocking.
Absolutely, even 2 years later.
That mistake came with consequences for University of Virginia Medical Center.
The state health department issued 4 citations for its negligence. That's where NBC 29's Molly Balkenbush continues team coverage on our year-long investigation. Molly.
Libby and Steve, once a complaint was filed, the Virginia Department of Health performed an unannounced internal investigation of the medical center. And that's when NBC 29 exclusively obtained these documents from the state. They give a detailed picture of what led to the traumatic events of November 26, 2011.
How big of an offense is this?
It was pretty serious.
A serious offense. The University of Virginia's associate vice president for the hospital and clinic's operations first said he knew nothing about when NBC 29 asked him about it back in March.
I don't know what that tip is. I don't have any specific knowledge of it.
But according to the University of Virginia website, Bo Cofield is responsible for the effective and efficient operation of the medical center. So we asked again.
I do know what you're speaking about, and we have communicated effectively with the family.
But according to this report from the Virginia Department of Health, medical center staff did not communicate effectively with the family of deceased farmer Bradley Beckwith after they were mistakenly sent home with a bag of his severed body parts November 26, 2011. It took more than 6.5 hours for medical center staff to direct Beckwith's father-in-law, after he called to report the horrible find, to take Bradley's arm and fingers to a funeral home. Eric Bodine with the Virginia Department of Health says the family had the right to a timely response.
Should the hospital have had someone get in the car and drive out to that family and help them?
That's, a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, but that is certainly an alternative that might have been explored.
The investigation found the hospital staff failed to tell the family about its internal grievance process or right to file a grievance with a state agency.
There are certain patient rights and things that a hospital has to do to preserve those rights.
The hospital was found not in compliance with patient rights, quality assurance performance improvement, and infection control.
Bradley Beckwith was flown to UVA and rushed inside here, where surgeons tried to save his life in the operating room. It was in the OR where investigators found a systematic failure.
The operating room and emergency departments had a different plan of action for amputated body parts after a patient's death. The trauma surgeon told health department officials he noticed a blue laundry bag in the corner of the operating room after Beckwith died. He said he opened it and something flew out, but did not identify what it was. The investigation showed the surgeon did not label the bag as a surgical pathology specimen because he did not remove the body parts during surgery. The next time that bag was handled, it ended up in the hands of Beckwith's family. The investigation showed the bag was next to Bradley's body. It was a blue bag where belongings are usually stored. When the bag was finally cut open at Randolph Funeral Home, it was 3 bags deep with red bags and towels inside.
That becomes an infection control issue just because you have bodily tissues that are not being properly treated.
After the internal investigation, the medical center was required to submit a plan of correction to the state, so no family goes through the stress that this family did.
It's emotionally very difficult for the family at a time that is already very emotional. The family is grief-stricken, and then to be confronted with this in addition to the loss of this young man. So that makes it all the more tragic, I think.
Amputated body parts must now be placed in a clear plastic bag labeled with patient's information and a biohazard sticker. The bag will then be placed in this human body parts cooler. If a patient is pronounced dead in the emergency department, the parts will be placed inside the foot of the body bag and sent to the morgue with the patient. A patient's family must receive a notice like this one, notifying them about their right to file a complaint. Lastly, hospital staff is required to be trained on the new procedures.
They have to have processes in place to continuously evaluate the quality and type of care that they provide.
Just 6 days after the Beckwith bag mix-up, the investigation also cited the hospital for not properly disposing of another patient's amputated finger.
And Molly, besides having to put together really a plan of correction, did the university face any real consequences when it came to this?
Well, the hospital was not fined because of the citations, but they did lose their deemed status. And what this means is they'll be on the radar for future state investigations. In the Virginia Department of Health, they have revisited the hospital since this has happened to make sure that they are in compliance.